My name is Amanda Charbonneau. I am the Member Engagement Manager here at the IAPP. I'm so happy to be here with you all today for our very first live Women Leading Privacy section virtual session, Women Who Inspire, a career panel with IAPP leaders. While there are as many women in the field of privacy as there are men, the truth is that women experience unique challenges and hurdles. The Women Leading Privacy section was created to help serve our membership and advance women in the field of privacy. If you're an IAPP member, we'd love for you to consider joining and utilizing this free member benefit. To get access to the session, learn more on our website, iapp.org. You'll receive access to member and section-specific content and resources, just like our virtual session here today. And before we get started, I'd also like to mention if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, there is a support button in the top right-hand corner of your screen. You'll be connected to a live support technician. And then the last 15 minutes of our session will be dedicated to virtual Q&A. So we want to hear from you, our virtual audience. If you have any burning questions from our panelists, that will be your time to shine. So speaking of our panelists, it's my privilege for me to be here with you all today and the amazing women to my right. They bring together their perspectives from the fields of law, government, and technology. And while their backgrounds may be diverse, the one thing that they all share is that they're outstanding leaders in their respective fields. I'd like to introduce Rita Hymas, our Data Protection Officer, our Research Director and General Counsel here at the IAPP.
Hi, Amanda.
We've got Caitlin Fennessy, our Senior Privacy Fellow. And then we have Kathy Skirbo, our Vice President and Chief Technology Officer at, you guessed it, right here at the IAPP. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. So as I mentioned, you all come from very different backgrounds. Rita, you went to law school. Caitlin, you've got your master's in public admin. And Kathy, your background is in mathematics. But you've all found yourself here at the IAPP, working in privacy. So I want to dig a little bit more into that. Caitlin, as a Senior Privacy Fellow, can you tell us a little bit more about your path and how working in government shaped it and got you to where you are today?
Sure. Thank you so much. And first, let me just say it's quite the honor to be sitting here with both of you, two leaders at the IAPP that I just love working with. So my background in government, so I recently joined, as you all know, the IAPP about 6 months ago after just about 10 years working on privacy for the US government. And so about 10 years ago, I was interviewing for a job at the U.S. International Trade Administration in trade policy, which is what I wanted to focus on. And I interviewed with this wonderful female leader in privacy, Kristen Jency, who heads up the Office of Digital Services Industries at the Department of Commerce. And she basically said, you should come work for us. You should work on privacy and cross-border data flows. And I said, that's intriguing, but I don't know anything about privacy. And she said, that's all right. We can teach you that. And I promise privacy is going to be big. And I said, oh, okay. So lucky for me, I took her up on that and started out working on privacy and helping U.S. companies comply with foreign data protection laws. So over 10 years, I basically covered every region of the world, doing privacy from this trade angle. At some point during that span, I had the good fortune of working on the OECD rewrite of the privacy guidelines. So they revamped their privacy guidelines in 2013, and that's where I met Omer Tene. He held the pen on that rewrite. So that was kind of my first introduction to someone who now is a leader here at the IAPP as well. For the last 5 years of my time, I covered the EU specifically. I was involved in Privacy Shield negotiations and then served as the first Privacy Shield director. So met some awesome people along the way. And I think what kind of brought me to the IAPP was engaging with IAPP leaders and staff at the conferences around the world, and just really feeling like, hey, the folks here are doing some great work in terms of building awareness and supporting the privacy profession. And so after 10 years, I thought, okay, I'm ready for a change. And so it kind of brought me here to IAPP.
Nice. Rita?
Okay, well, so I'm at the IAPP for many of the same reasons that Caitlin is, which is it just seemed like a cool place to work. And it also seemed like, unlike Caitlin, for me, I was working in privacy in private practice and in academia, but it was an opportunity to really focus on the field of privacy and gain more expertise than I had the full opportunity to have before I came here. My path is very different from Caitlin's. Geographically, I've lived around the United States, but when I was finishing law school, my dream was to be an environmental law lawyer, like a lot of law students. And the reason for this was that I was, of course, passionate about the environment, but also really interested in science. So I figured if I get to do an area of law that's driven by science, that'll be interesting. And it is, and it was. Over time, just through opportunism, really, my career took other paths. I got involved working in intellectual property law, which again involves creativity and innovation and sometimes a little science. And the privacy issues that started to percolate into my career when I was in academia, actually at the University of Maine, which is how I got to know Trevor Hughes, and actually how I also got to know Omer Tene. We invited Omer to come teach. I started to pay attention to the fact that the science of today, there's a lot of biology still happening, a lot of innovation in biotech and whatnot, but because information technology, an area of tech and science, is so pervasive, working in the field of privacy law scratches the itch of always wanting to know what's happening in science and tech, but it's different in the sense that issues of privacy law are not unique to companies that are necessarily innovating, engaging in trying to acquire intellectual property rights, or companies that are involved in pollution or otherwise needing the opportunity to take advantage of environmental laws. Privacy's everywhere. Every company, retail outfits that are selling coffee and donuts have to know as much about privacy in some ways as massive multinationals. So I thought this was so much fun. Here's an area of law that I can practice regardless of who my clients are and still constantly have to learn about science and tech. So that's essentially what's fun about privacy. And I would just say that I got into it really through relationships, much like Caitlin said. Opportunism and relationships, and knowing Trevor and Omer is how I ended up here.
Wow.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yeah, so I guess I'm the poster child for one, not knowing anybody in privacy, and two, knowing very little about privacy, but three, I guess similarly, being very curious and wanting to do something new and different. And that's actually probably my career. I've been in tech for 30 years. I've done everything from building apps, infrastructure, security. It's probably the closest to privacy. Bringing all those things together in a company like the IAPP is what brought me here. The opportunity to work in a place that just culture is amazing. The women and the people here are amazing. But the privacy part, actually, I'm the newbie. I came partially to learn because I think it's. So if you're in technology in 2005, 2006, 2007, in security, it was the new thing. It was the thing we were starting to worry about. And where security is now 15 years later, I kind of think privacy is where we were back then. And if we look forward, that's where privacy is going to be from a technology perspective. So for me, I felt like what a great opportunity to get involved in a time where it's starting to shift more to tech. Some of the laws that are changing are impacting all the different companies. The technology disruption that's happening is actually causing some of the privacy issues, as we all know, with AI and machine learning and things like that. So for me, to come here was a lot less about who I knew, and just, I guess I feel very lucky that I was 3 miles away and had really no idea about privacy, and now coming coming here and recognizing I still don't know a lot about privacy, but what a phenomenal opportunity for tech people to get involved now. I mean, every company, to Rita's point, every company is going to have to be thinking about it, whether they're small in their retail or whether they're large in their financial services. So to be a part of helping define that and promote it and improve it and really, I guess, be a voice to the tech community about why it's so important is pretty exciting for me. So.
Great, thank you, Kathy. And I want to encourage you all to interject, ask questions, keeping it casual. I want to note, so before you all started at the IAPP, technically your roles didn't exist in a formal sense. So Rita, I'm gonna put you on the hot seat because you've got the most titles.
I have the most titles that didn't exist. I have 3 titles that didn't exist.
Exist before you.
Yes,
So
we're working
tell us
on
a
that.
little bit more about how you sort of shaped your role here at the IAPP, any challenges you've incurred along the way.
Look, I assume some of the reasons people might be tuning in today is less to do with who we are and more to do with how you can, lessons learned, how do these things affect other people who are maybe thinking about a career path. So I'd rather talk about it from that perspective. One of the opportunities that is fun about working at the IPP is that it is a small business. When I started here, we were fewer than 200 employees. But it's also a global company. So we have members all over the world. So that combination of small business with a big footprint that's growing like crazy, both in terms of our membership, our customer base, and also in terms of the employees we need to staff it, that is a sweet spot for opportunity to learn, right? And to take on new responsibilities. Because companies that are small and growing are always needing more and more assistance and support. Things they didn't need before, they suddenly realize that they need. And in the case of a small business like the IAPP, those needs may not amount to a full-time job. It's a piece of a job. And so if you want to learn fast, start in a small growing company and just be ready and willing and able. Say, I'll take that, I'll do that, right? And through that willingness and I think open-mindedness, sort of and self-confidence, let's be honest, sure, I can handle that, right? Maybe hubris. You acquire new skills and new opportunity. And the titles are a way of reflecting the fact that your role has changed. In the case of the DPO role, we definitely wanted to signal to our members that we take GDPR seriously as a company, not just as something that we're teaching others, but that obviously we need to be in compliance as well. So DPO signals to our members, oh, there's someone that I can talk to if I have a question about how the IPP is using my data. So that made sense. We needed, a step up in our privacy compliance role. And the GC thing, trust me, it's just because our CFO is tired of signing contracts. So we wanted somebody else to do it. So at the moment, it really is a contract management role and a signatory responsibility. I suspect it will grow like many other things within a small business. But so purely from an advice perspective, I think people who in any level of their profession who are ready to make a lane change, it's always a great opportunity. And I think, Kathy, I'd love to hear from you that, coming from a larger institution to a smaller one, while, the problems are maybe smaller and the impact may be smaller, the opportunity to learn is massive because suddenly you're playing so many different roles and you're seeing so many pieces of the enterprise because it's such a small place to work.
That's completely accurate. And I've been in large organizations my whole career until now, and I would say I played different parts along the way throughout. As I mentioned, I have a vast background in doing different things, but they were, to your point, like siloed. Like I worked in security for a little while. I worked in building applications for a little while. I worked in actually process improvement and technology procurement. And actually, I would say Rita's GC role is very important to me. So I think it is kind of fun for me. And one of the reasons I chose to come here at this point in my career was to sort of show up as my whole, like everything, my whole toolkit I can use in my role as CTO. And having some not to knock big corporations, because I have learned so much and there's so much depth and breadth and opportunity. I moved around a lot in the organizations to continue to learn and grow, but to be able to show up and not know today if I'm going to be wearing a technology hat or maybe an HR hat because there's something we need to talk to them about, or maybe learning about a business organization, a business problem that needs to be solved. I just feel like there's so much opportunity to do it all in one role. And defining the CTO role has been really fun for me too. It is actually a part of my background, is taking on a new organization and standing something up for new need. Like I mentioned, with security, that was something I spent a good deal of time in 2005, 6, 7. I wish I could remember the date, but I can't remember. It's too far. To just create that organization that does that. So creating new organizations, creating new roles, defining them has kind of been a part of my background and what I do. But to be able to do it here at a small company, there's a little more freedom. So 3 or 4 weeks in, I started talking to Trevor about the need for maybe a little more organization disciplines around some of the data space that we were playing in operationally for ourselves. So now I have a data team as well as a technology team. And that's kind of exciting to be able to just say, oh, we need that, and then be able to make it happen without some of the larger corporation, big red tape-ish kind of stuff. Again, not to knock big companies, but you can move a little more quickly. There's a little, I guess, maybe a little more pressure on you too, because you are the decision maker, and that can be a little frightening as well. But so far, it's been a ton of fun, and I think creating this organization has been one of the highlights of my careers, I'd say. Yeah.
Ladies, what would you tell someone who maybe feels a little bit reticent about taking on a role that didn't exist before them, knowing that they have to shape it and there's no rules or guidelines or any of that? What would you tell someone?
Oh, I'd love to tackle that. I guess my advice would be to jump in and ask a lot of questions and engage with the community in terms of engaging with folks who are leaders in that space and who can share their thoughts and advice with you. I feel like the opportunity to learn from others who are doing something that you have less experience in is always so valuable. And if I can also just kind of piggyback on what we were just discussing, for me, when I came in to the IAPP, one piece of what I was asked to do was to lead our privacy engineering initiative. And to some extent, this is an area where Kathy almost has more
I know. I think I kind
experience
of
than
inserted
I
myself
do.
in there pretty
No,
quickly.
it's awesome, and I've learned from you and so many others. And I remember when I was speaking with Omer and Trevor and folks here about this role, I said, "Hey, I don't have the technical skills. I don't have the background in privacy engineering myself." And their advice and kind of the way I've approached this was exactly that, to kind of learn from the community. And so I've had this incredible opportunity. And to me, this is why I'm enjoying this new position and role so much, because it's an opportunity to learn. And so reaching out to academic leaders or industry leaders, our members around the world, and folks like you to try to understand the pieces of the job that I have less experience in. And to me, that kind of makes the role a constant learning experience, which I guess from my perspective is what makes a role fun.
Yeah, I think too, and a lot of exactly what you're saying and what I've watched you do the last 6 months, it's less about what you know and how you think about learning. And I think that's just probably any lesson in life is I've been super impressed with how you've tackled. I actually wouldn't know that you didn't know what you just said. I've learned. It sounds like a lot of no's, but I didn't know that you didn't know some of this stuff, because I do think I actually am grateful to sort of have you in that role, because your research and that you have a broad community in tremendously helpful to bring that forward. So I do think it's a little bit more of how you think and how you think about learning than necessarily what you know.
Right. I completely agree. I spent 14 years in academia at a law school. And of course, when I was an undergrad, I was even growing up like, oh, I want to be an academic. Like, that's the coolest job. The most important job there is to be a teacher. I suppose that's sort of true. What I think I appreciate now, though, is that while those credentials, while that fundamental education is crucial, it absolutely is crucial. It changes the way you think. It teaches you very, very deep, lasting, fundamental base value skills. And it frankly gives you the credential you might need for certain jobs. Let's just be honest. Getting those credentials is important. That's not the end of it. You can't stop there, and you won't be able to stop there. If you stop there, you're done. Like, you're dead. So that's why there's even a market for a company like the IAPP. That's why this particular organization is so reflective of our time, I think, because as you continue through your career, you're going to have to credential for something else. You're going to have to be willing to maybe offer yourself a new level of expertise or major again in something that didn't exist before. And this is not the end of it, right? There will always be something new. And organizations that are more able to respond to change, which I think certification bodies and membership associations can do more easily than a degree conferring institution. There's a role in this economy for institutions like ours, for organizations like ours. They provide you with the credential you need to say, yeah, I did my homework and I studied this topic. Here's my credential to show for it. But they, more importantly, probably provide you with the ongoing, continuing education, the network, because none of us, even after we study for an exam and take an exam, actually know how to do it and what the problems will be that comes up in our career. So you match that with a network, with people who are more like you, who are in a similar role to you. That won't be all the people you went to graduate school with, right? They've gone off and majored in their own areas and their own. So that ability to continuously refresh who you need to know in the moment as you progress through your career is why there is even a need for an IAPP.
I think too, this is absolutely. I think this is a place too where the law and technology probably have been a little bit different, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, the last 30 years, because I think as you're talking, I'm thinking, geez, if I just graduated with my math degree and thought I could, 30 years forward, just step into this role or any technology role along the way with what I knew then, I mean, it's just not possible. Even my degree didn't necessarily prepare me for my first role or my second role or anything. Technology has just changed so much the last 30 years that you haven't been in technology for 10, 20, 30 years without having to learn. And now the acceleration of the tech change and everything just makes it that much more critical to be a learner in that field. And I just think privacy, like I said at the beginning, privacy is just kind of now the new thing that in addition to having all this knowledge about different kinds of technology, how they work together, privacy kind of comes in from the side. It's not about what you know, it's about how you do it. Similar to security, it's not necessarily about what you knew, but how you apply that security to technology. So to me, you have to be a continuous learner just to be in tech.
Caitlin, how much do you credit the person that first hired you, the woman who first hired you, for really shaping everything else? Because she knew better than you did at the time. How would you know that privacy would be hot? And you were willing to say, well, I respect your opinion. Why not? I'll jump in.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I give her a ton of credit. And she really saw it coming, as some other folks that we know and work with did. But my first year working on privacy for the U.S. government, admittedly, was really slow. And I remember questioning that. What am I doing? She says it's going to be big. Do I trust that? Do I stick with it? And 1 year in, all of a sudden, Obama launched the privacy blueprint. And from there, everything just took off. So yeah, there's these people along the way. And I would say just, to give a shout out to her in particular, there are women leaders, doesn't have to be women out there, who sometimes play a more behind the scenes role in kind of are there supporting others, recognizing others. And I think a lot of people credit her for kind of launching their careers in privacy. And so, I give her a ton of credit.
Yeah, I think the lesson here is really to just be a consummate learner and be adept to change. I mean, really is what I'm seeing as the common thread. And, Kathy, I'd be curious, have you had more than one pivot in your career? And for someone who maybe is a little bit averse to change, how does that sort of shape up and how has that
Uh,
made you a stronger leader and helped you?
yeah, so there, I unpack so many different things there. I am not adverse to change. I actually love change. I lean into change, sometimes to my own detriment, perhaps. In the change curve, there's the folks who really um, they hold on tight to what they know, and then there's the folks who lean in, full on throttle. Change for change sake is good. I'm somewhere in between, but I do think I embrace change quite a bit. So for me, like none of this really scares me. None of this really has been tough. It's been an adventure. I've had probably, gosh, I want to say maybe a dozen pivots in my career, and this just feels like one more. But again, I think that's part of. For me, the last 30 years being in technology, you had to continually pivot and change. I actually would say working in big corporations gives you the advantage to pivot quickly. There's a lot more opportunities to look at things differently. I frequently was the one that raised my hand to say, oh, you need something new over there, or I was the one who they gave something broken to fix, which when things are broken, you learn more. So I would say, I think if I can't even name how many pivots there were, but I think that's kind of been my experience, that you pivot and you pivot and you pivot. And as technology grows, as new opportunities come, there's maybe different reasons that happens. That even when my kids were young, I probably pivoted for one reason, to be closer to home. I left Boston and came and worked up in New Hampshire. As they got older, it was easier for me to come in here or to take a different role where I traveled a lot. So some of it has nothing to do with career and more to do with your life circumstances. One thing I love about the IAPP is it's about your whole person, not just showing up with a full toolkit of what I have to offer the IAPP, but being able to go home at the end of the day and have that work-life balance too with my family. So I don't know, that's a very meandering answer. Yes, lots of pivots, Amanda.
And I want to dig
Yeah,
into that
yeah.
work-life balance piece because that's one of our cultural values here at the IAPP. And I feel like women definitely have a different perspective when it comes to work-life balance. And I'd like to sort of hear more about your perspectives on that, if it's really impacted maybe the roles you've decided to take along the way in your career paths and give some advice and perspective.
Caitlin, let's let you start with that one. I'm just
Make eye
gonna sit
contact
over
with me.
here.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a great question that so many people, I think both women and men, have to grapple with. Of course, it has absolutely, impacted the decisions I made. I remember sitting down once with a very senior government official who was exploring a position for me, and I remember her telling me, well, you can't expect to leave before 7 o'clock at night. And I just had my first baby, and I said, thanks so much. This sounds really exciting, but it's not for me right now, And so we make choices. I had the incredible opportunity, and I'm hopeful that more and more people will have this type of opportunity, which is after I had my second child, I kind of faced that challenge, and so wanted to move from DC to New Hampshire to raise my kids and be closer to our family support network to help with the work-life balance. And so at the time I went to my boss and I said, thank you at the Department of Commerce. Thank you. This has been awesome, but I need to quit because I'm moving to New Hampshire to raise my family. And I was offered the incredible opportunity to telework full-time for the US government. And this was about 6 years ago now. And at a time when that really wasn't done much in the US government. So it was completely novel. For the first year, I barely told anyone because I was so nervous about screwing it up. So a lot of the colleagues I worked with in DC thought I was sitting in my office at Commerce, on Pennsylvania Avenue, and just talking to them on the phone when in fact I was in New Hampshire. And so that was really lucky for me because it allowed me to not step out of the workforce, not completely change my career, which is what I thought I was doing. and stay in an exciting field and better manage the work-life balance by being closer to an extended family network. So I'm hopeful that as telework, it's not novel anymore. More and more folks are doing it in industry and government. I'm hoping that that might help in some respects with some of those challenges. I don't know. What do you think?
So Caitlin isn't just lucky. Like, they probably wouldn't let just anybody telework. You were a superstar. And so they would probably do anything they could to keep you. And now we get you. So haha. But still, no. I guess my thoughts, once again, I always want to think about what are there any lessons that other people can take? I don't know. When I work with law students, my advice usually is whatever law career you choose, just make sure you're working with people you really like. So that's not necessarily a work-life balance question on the family versus work, but it's like a place to start. Oh, I really want to do this area of law, but, what does it take? I'm like, the best job you get might actually be doing something else in law. But if you love the people in your practice group, you'll just love, workers' comp or whatever, because they're so nice. And so no, it wasn't your favorite thing that you studied in law school, but at least the people you work with are kind and considerate, and they support you and they promote you. They give you good work. They help you advance. Like, all of that is so much more important than the thing you get to think about all day long, in my opinion. And it certainly worked for me to just work with nice people. That was really the number one thing. And then I did make choices with my career to be able to be in jobs where mostly the key issue here was just pure flexibility. Can you leave at any time because someone is throwing up and the daycare is calling you, or because there's a cross-country meet at 3:30 in the afternoon. They're very inconvenient, these school functions. But the right office, the right work environment appreciates that not only are you going to leave, but you're also probably going to get your work done later, or when you're going to get it done. They trust you. Some of that you have to earn, but you can shop for environments where that's part of the norm, and you look and you observe and you ask in your interview and you ask, in clever ways to try to figure out what is the culture there and will it support the fact that I love my work and I'm going to get it done, but I also really love this life that I have and the people that are in it outside of the office. I just wouldn't want to ever work any place that didn't allow me that freedom.
Yeah, I love that. And I love it. Just so much has changed. My kids are older and so much has changed. And I remember, I don't mean to be like the old person on the couch, but I remember when your choice was you could leave and raise your kids, or you could, work 7 in the morning to 7 at night. And some of the choices now we have, put it back on technology. It's because of technology, really. It's the video conferencing, it's the laptops, and they've been around for a while, but I think it's the change in the way we work, and everything has been enabled by technology. And I really do wish that we had some of those options at the time. My choice, I was happy with my choice to stay in the career and put my kids in daycare, but it was hard. When I was in Boston and traveling to New Hampshire, you'd get up in the dark and you'd leave in the dark, you'd get up in the dark and you'd get home in the dark. You'd see your house on the weekends, really, in the light. And so I love the options that are available to people today. And I 100% agree, Rita. It's not just the content of the work or the subject of the work. And this kind of gets back to your other question about if you're building a new organization, how do you not be afraid of that? Well, it's your job, figure out, it could be, it needs to be the holistic picture. It needs to be the people you work with, the subject you're working with, the ability to make sure you can go to the track meet or the soccer game or anything like that. And that's going to be what makes you happy at the end of the day.
That's personal to us too. And to take that to another level, how do you as a leader, so now you're responsible for other employees, they want to have a work-life balance, you're going to have to support that, but you also need to set limitations and expectations. So Kathy, you've probably overseen more people than any of us.
Well.
Where are the challenges that you faced in trying to set the limits on taking advantage, but also, of course, keeping your good people happy, because that's part of being a good leader. I mean, you want your best employees to stick around, so you want them to feel as though this is, the right environment for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's no secret to it. I think part of it is treating people like adults. I mean, I've always been frustrated with the absolute of rules. You absolutely have to be here at 8 and you have to leave at 4, or you absolutely have to show up at this meeting on time, or you absolutely like if you treat people like adults. I don't need to approve your vacation time. You know what your workload is. You know how to get your work done and make sure you have coverage when you're out and things like that. And actually, as a leader, it's a lot easier for you to lead people and when you treat them like adults than when you treat them like you need to have all those rules and everything. I think role modeling is important too, and this is actually one I struggle with. I'm an early bird. I am up between 4:30 and 5, and I will come into the office because I don't have little kids at home anymore that I need to worry about. And I think sometimes people think, oh, she's working long hours. She expects me to work long hours. So I have to consistently say, I'm not the poster child for work-life balance. If you have little kids, I'm not. So you have to be, I think, open and honest. And I think the other thing is you have to be like EQ in a leadership role is so important. Understanding that you don't have 10 people that all have the same things. You don't know what someone's going through when they're not physically in the office, or when they're in the office, but they have a sick parent or sick spouse or something going on that they can't control financially, and it's in the back of their head. And you have to be willing to listen, to understand, and to make those accommodations. And when other people come to you and say, "Hey, that's not fair," it can put you in a bind because you're not privacy, right? You're not going to tell people what someone else is going through, but you have to get them to understand that as a leader, you have listened to this person and you understand that there's circumstances that need a little accommodation and things like that. So it's not a secret answer. It depends, but I mean, I'm sure you've seen these things before as well. And exactly Caitlin's example of, I need to go to New Hampshire. I need to raise my kids differently. Well, we're going to accommodate you. That's a leader that listens
Because
to
she's
you.
worth
Because she's
No,
worth it.
totally.
And
But I mean, that's the point.
absolutely.
Otherwise, Caitlin's like, sorry, I have other options.
But
Yeah.
but I'm sure part of why she's worth it is because you're worth it, by the way, is that she was treated that way.
Right,
She
that's true. So
she
it's
earned
reciprocal,
that,
right,
but
yeah.
it's because she was treated like she was valued and she was motivated to work hard. And
Mm.
if you were working long hours and you weren't being treated well, we'd probably been like, yeah, thanks for working from home. I'll find something in New Hampshire. So it's both sides, but I think you got to listen and you got to learn and you got to recognize everybody's different.
And it
So,
creates so much loyalty if you do that, I
Absolutely,
think.
yeah.
Show trust in people and provide those accommodations when they're needed. Then folks are that much happier with their jobs and they give that much more back. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Very interesting. Well, Kathy, I'm going to hone in on you as a self-proclaimed privacy newbie. Can you share with our
Ah.
virtual viewers any challenges that you've come across being new to your role, and how you've navigated those?
Don't tell the ones that are privileged and confidential.
Thank you, General Counsel.
I have nothing to
Yes,
share.
everything is wonderful.
I would like to plead the fifth.
Yeah, it's been an interesting challenge anyway to come into a leadership role in an organization at the level and really not be a privacy expert, to feel that well, on the one hand, I do have the confidence to believe I belong here and I'm helping. I do also worry at times that people think, oh, she doesn't know anything about privacy. What's up with that? So I do think it's probably been myself inside. My challenges have been built inside. And I think, interestingly enough, it's probably been less about the shift to privacy, although it's just you get back to that ground where you're new and learning again. So you have to build up your expertise and your confidence and know how to apply it to your technology or your role. And more about my shift, and maybe this isn't where you want me to go, Amanda, but my shift has been more going from corporate to a small company and figuring out how to make decisions and stand behind them and do that while I'm learning the business. And I think that's probably been the hardest for me, is making sure that every day I show up and somebody doesn't feel like, why is she making that decision? What was she thinking? And doesn't she understand that CCPA won't let that happen, or something like that? And I insinuate myself in places that I don't know necessarily that people want me, but I think, oh, well, here I am, Caitlin. We're going to talk about engineering. We're going to talk about vendor management. We're going to talk about So, but yeah.
Really appreciate your insertions, by
Well,
the way.
yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
And I love that too, because I feel like one, you have the confidence to insert yourself in situations where maybe you aren't the subject matter expert. And
Well,
I kind of want to touch on the whole imposter syndrome thing that, a lot of women do face, men as well. But I'd be curious to know, you're all very high up in your fields, respected leaders.
it's
How do you
real.
combat that? Like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to look like I do. So how do you navigate those waters? Because I'm sure
I actually took an acting class in college, and that helps a little bit. I'm
does it.
totally kidding, but no, I really did take an acting class. I was really bad, but you look like you have a serious answer to
No,
that.
because I'm really thinking about this. Where am I in situations where I admit that I don't know what I'm talking about? Probably
But
every
I don't
day, at
think
least a little
you
bit.
don't. Yeah.
It's about the dynamic of who I'm around. And if I feel like I know more than the other people in the room because I've done it for longer. So again, I work a lot with students, with junior people just entering the profession just on a day-to-day basis, or with people whose jobs at the company are not privacy. They look to me to know what that is, and we work together collaboratively to solve the problem. So again, we're a team of like one and then everybody else in their domain. So I would say the situations where I most feel like I am out of my league are the technical ones. And my solution is just to confess my ignorance and ask people to gently teach me what I don't know, because I'm more dangerous if I pretend that I do, right? And I try to because in privacy, the answer, the legal, if you will, or compliance answer often depends on how the technology works. They're completely interrelated. If the technology works this way, well, then we either have to change that or we have to inform people or we need consent or whatever the situation is. So that's where it struggles all the time. I'm learning new things about, oh, I didn't know it did that. And what is that, by the way? What does that word that you just used mean? Sometimes I'll run and look it up quietly after the meeting. But yeah, I think instead of pretending and having a show of, it's the opposite, which is to say, please explain that to me so that I can do my job better. And therefore the company can, be more secure. You put the company first in that instance rather than try to pretend. That's how I perceive it.
I want to build on two things that you just said there. In terms of the lack of tech knowledge, I feel like that would be one of my recommendations, kind of going out to the privacy field, that if I could do it again, I would get some technical expertise. And I just feel like looking forward, I perhaps self-interestedly see privacy engineering, but the fusing of tech and privacy as where the profession is headed. And I think that those in the legal field or the policy field would really benefit from getting some education in the tech space. But on the imposter syndrome, I have to say, I feel like I've tried to take, asking questions is always good, but I feel like that imposter syndrome thing is super real, and that I at least feel it all the time, even maybe when I shouldn't. And I don't know if that is something that women experience more or not, but I've had to continually remind myself, hey, you know just as much as anyone in the room on X that you're talking about. So don't be hesitant. Don't feel like an imposter, and just remind myself of that so that I don't think, well, why do you want me to talk about that? How am I qualified to discuss it? So I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's like a check. It's a check. It's something inside you that says, it makes you stop and think, am I the expert in the room or am I not the expert in the room? And at different times it can undermine you and you don't participate, and when you should, and at other times it maybe should tell you not to participate. I don't know. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. But
I've been in meetings where I think I know more than the other person, but the other person is simply insisting that they know the most. And there's nothing you can do to convince them otherwise, or at least that's their posture.
And I think that's why I actually, sorry, and I'm interrupting you,
you're
but I
stuck.
think that's why I actually think imposter syndrome, and I have it in spades like everyone. It's actually a humility thing. It helps you sort of think through your role in a conversation, and it can get absolutely can get in your way. But I would say, in the spirit of professional development or coaching or whatever we're doing here on this couch today, it's we all have it. Like, look, we all have it, and you've got to find your toolkit to work through it, and you've got to figure out. And you are going to have those people. We all have those people that are just so officious that even if they, they could walk in the building and tell me something about technology with and just the way they say it will stop me in my tracks, and I'll think, wow, they're really smart and they know what they're talking about, and maybe they know something I don't. But you have to know yourself, and you have to recognize, and I think that's professional development. It cuts through. I think it does cut through gender, because I have a lot of male colleagues who have told me in the past that they have imposter syndrome, but I think it ties directly to humility. And the need. I think humility is so powerful. I do think saying I don't know something, actually, it builds credibility. It builds, people think, oh, wow, she's in that role and she's willing to say she doesn't know something, is way more powerful than trying to BS your way through an answer and haven't, I don't know.
And I think it's a little bit of both too. I think when you hear that voice in your head saying, you don't know what you're doing, you don't know anything in the room, it's saying, hey, thanks, I've got this.
Yeah.
Like, I know
Oh,
what
I
I'm
love that.
doing,
Yeah.
feeling that confidence. Because sometimes I feel like that voice is there to keep you safe and keep you in your comfort zone. And it's like, I'm good. Thank you. But on that, it is actually time, ladies, for virtual Q&A with our virtual viewers. So now is the
Okay.
time. You'll see a button at the top right-hand corner of your screen that says Q&A. Please submit your questions to the ladies, and we will do our very best to answer them. All right, we've got one coming in. What advice do you have for other women just starting their careers, privacy or not? New in their careers. And go.
And go.
Oh, so in terms of new in their careers, I'm going to pass on a piece of advice that I feel like led me to where I am today and was super random. I moved to Washington, D.C. without a job, slept on a cousin's couch, and I was on the metro in Washington, D.C., perhaps going, for an informational interview or something. And this random woman on the metro, how we were talking, I have no recollection, but she said, oh, yeah, you should just walk into the Congress and hand them your resume and, tell whatever committee it was that I was interested in at the time that you want to work for them. And I was like, wait, I can do that? I can just reach out directly to the people I want to work with? Like, I don't have to go through some job board? She was like, oh yeah, people do it all the time. And I ended up with a job on the Hill by just doing that. And so
Awesome.
I was blown away by it. But my piece of advice there is, if there are people that you want to work with, whether it's in industry, in government, or whatever, do your research, figure out who's working in the space you want to work in, and reach out to them. Often the emails, maybe not public, but you could figure it out. So just reach out. And I think we're also always, happy to help in the privacy field and talk to folks. But reaching out is what I would recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. I have different things. I would say don't have your heart set on one thing and then only pursue that, because every single opportunity that you have and you take and you learn, it's a learning one that could take you to the next thing. Like Rita was describing, where you thought you were going to be and where you ended up are very different. I would say know yourself. Get what motivates you, what inspires you, what do you want to show? Do you want a place, like Rita was saying earlier? I'm going to point to Rita again. Actually, these are words from Rita through me, apparently.
In my mouth.
What kind of work-life balance do you want to have? Who do you want to work with? The network is so important, and I 100% agree with what you're saying. Pick up the phone, email, call, reach out to a network, reach out to someone who may have a network. Use tools like LinkedIn to try and find people who maybe find people who know people. But then I would say, but it's on you. Like, don't pick up the phone and call somebody and say, hey, could you get me a job? It's more, could you get me an interview? Could you get me, could you find a place that maybe I could learn more about this? Like, explore. And then once you have your first job, there's a whole other set of things I would say. Like, do those things that maybe put you out of your comfort extrovert zone, that maybe definitely do anything, try anything, try different things, and be open and be a continuous learner. Because I would say, graduating with a math degree, if you told me even 15 years into my career that I'd be in some sort of tech career, I probably would have told you were crazy. But yeah, I don't.
The common thread between what you both said, that as I was just thinking about that, is that you're actually able to have a personal relationship with whoever it is you want to work with. So by going into Congress personally, humanly, physically being there, they can see who you are, talk to you, meet you, and instantly know this is a competent, bright, attractive person, and I want to spend more time with her, right? We live in such a virtual world. Everyone's always texting and social mediaing, and there's like very little human connection. But you'll find that your job comes when you have a human connection, and you Skype with someone to say, hey, I'd like to know more about the job, but can I set up a Skype? Physically see each other, show your face, be human. It makes a massive difference on your perception of someone when you can turn them from a piece of paper, a CV that they've worked over for hours and hours and hours, to an actual person that you can talk to and relate to and look in the eyes. So if you have to volunteer to get in the door, anything you can do to be physically in their space and show who you are as a human, I think is a game changer to getting that first job.
Yeah, I would say too, once you're in there, that advice doesn't change.
Oh, yeah.
So when you're in a meeting, sit at the table. That's like, I read that in a book somewhere early on. Sit at a table, speak up. If you got interrupted, sort of stand your ground and make sure that your voice continues to matter. Because I think that, especially for women, I think that happens to us a lot, where we sort of fade into the background, or we let others lead instead of sticking our neck out or anything like that. But just show up, and maybe this newer generation. Again, I'm aging myself here, but maybe it's different. I mean, a lot of my son's friends, women, they're very strong, and they really have that sense that they belong. But in my career, I feel like a lot of times it was, you just sit in the back of the room and you don't speak your mind, and then you leave and you think, nobody even remembered that you were there. So be present and show up, and everything you're saying, make the personal connections, find those advocates that want to help you. Look for mentors. Don't think you know everything right out of the gate. I know there's been nobody that showed up at my door and asked me for help that I've said, yeah, sorry, I don't have time for you. I mean, people really want to help, especially women want to help women continue to grow and thrive. And
if you show interest in other people's work, whether it's in trying to get a job, if you're interested in that work and you show interest in what they're doing, whether it's looking for a mentor or looking for a job, I feel like people love that. And, then you've made a connection.
We love to talk about ourselves
based on what you want to do.
And it never goes away. I have a phenomenal mentor who I still continue to reach out to and ask for help and guidance, who's been instrumental with my career in the last year as I've made changes and shifts and things like that. So even, again, back to that role modeling, I role model that I need help at this stage in the game, and we all do, and that's pretty normal. So.
Which actually leads to my next question. Mentor or sponsor? Do you need one? Both? Does it matter? Does it make a difference?
Yeah.
Elaborate.
You need both. I mean, a mentor is there by your side, helping coach you. A sponsor is someone who is there advocating for you when you're not in the room. So that's the person that's going to talk about you to get, in a promotion discussion or a compensation discussion, or who do we want to put on this project discussion. You need both. And frequently your mentor can be your sponsor, but not always. I mean, you really want to make sure that you have both.
I'd like to say too,
Sure.
that I think I truly do believe that a good leader is someone who can look at all the people that worked for them and have them actually be in positions as good or better than the one that they had. That they are there to help their team grow and thrive and advance, rather than constantly being jealous that they have to be the boss or they have to have the swankiest title or whatever. Because if you're in an environment where that leadership always wants to be a senior and more important and isn't willing to kind of help you become as good as, or even better, like reach another level within another organization, you're going to wither, so that's a hard one. But if you find yourself in a leadership position, how can you set your ego to the place where you actually want to judge your success by how well everyone who worked for you ended up doing in this world? that's what your first boss did.
Absolutely.
And that's a rare thing. And it's something we should all actually work on, even if it feels too feminine. We'll embrace that. That's exactly what women should be doing as leaders that's why there should be more women leaders. So if your instinct is to promote others, then that would ultimately make everybody, happier and more successful.
Yep, 100% agree. You need to give people the opportunity to be in the room with your boss.
Yeah.
You need to coach them to have the confidence, perhaps, to present what they have created versus you constantly not constantly, but taking that from them to present to your boss. And that actually helps you continue to grow. And I would say the flip side of that is if you're in a role where your leader isn't doing that for you, if you feel like, geez, every time I have a good idea or I come up with something, it's my boss who always presents it or who always takes the credit for it. You maybe need to think about moving to a different role or a different leader or having that conversation. Sometimes it's just they may not even be aware. And that's, a brave thing too, to go in and say, hey, I would love the opportunity to present my ideas instead of always having them done through you. But
Fantastic advice. We have time for one last question, ladies. Tell us a female leader in privacy who you admire and why. This is yours. Come on, Caitlin.
We've done
Yeah. Well, I feel like I could spend an entire hour on that question. I think that's why the privacy profession, or one of the reasons it has been so rewarding. There are so many impressive female leaders. So maybe I don't think I could pick one. I've talked about one already, Kristen Jency, who I think plays that role of supporting a lot of leaders in the field, and she's built a lot. There are two different women leaders in privacy in Europe who I have a lot of admiration for. I'm a little nervous about calling out names, in a privacy group, but since it's all positive. So one of them is a colleague who taught me that if you bring chocolate to a meeting, your meeting will always go better. And I admire her for her diplomacy and also just for her creativity and her determination. And that's Isabel Varican, who now runs or kind of set up the European Data Protection Board. And she's just always been an incredibly hardworking, creative, and diplomatic person. And the other person who I have a lot of admiration for is very well known in the privacy profession. And that is Helen Dixon, who leads the Irish DPA. And I think one thing I've been super impressed in watching her take over that position is kind of remaking that office. She grew it an incredible amount and making it into an office that is just incredibly well respected for the work that they do, and also just an office that really stands up for what they believe in and has engaged in cases that are very challenging, and they're always willing to take them on. And I think that takes incredible leadership. So
Totally agree with you.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies. That wraps up our very first live virtual session for Women Leading Privacy section. Again, I encourage you to look onto our website, iapp.org, to learn more about this section. You'll see a survey in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Please take our post-event survey. We'd love to hear your feedback so we can provide more great content for the Women Leading Privacy section. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you.